Welcome back. Now, before the break, you just heard Kim's interview with Reverend Al Sharpton, obviously an ardent opponent of Stop and Frisk. Now, some say that the policy, it helps reduce crime and keeps guns off the streets. You look at the overall numbers, New York is a safer place, but the debate is at what cost? Well, one of the supporters of the policy is New York City Councilman Peter Vallone Jr., a Democrat who represents Astoria, Queens, as well as some of the surrounding areas. He's also the chair of the Public Safety Committee of the City Council, and I spoke with him earlier today about this very subject. I got a question for you. You know the numbers. When this thing started, you know, it was $74 million. In fact, the settlements that the city had to pay out in 2002, last year, it was more than $186 million. The number expected to be even more this year, with the amount of payments that the NYPD's got to pay out here, and more specifically the city. Got a lot of people saying, first of all, this is targeted, and second of all here, this isn't what New York's all about.
Stop and Frisk works. It is a policy, it's the only policy that I know of that will get the gun off the street before the shooting happens. Now, are there problems with it? Absolutely. There's some legitimate concerns, and that's why I have led the way in reforming this policy. In fact, one of the topics that the mayoral candidates bring up is, are we doing too many stop and frisk? That's a legitimate question. I think we may be doing too many stop and frisk. I think we're pushing the police department too hard, but it's a policy that works.
You've gone through the same data that we have. More than 99% of people that are stopped in these stop and frisks don't have a gun.
12% of these stops do result in a summons or an arrest. And that's entirely normal. 1%, a very small percentage does result in actual guns, but we got 800 off the street. That's entirely normal. That's expected. These stop and questions, about half of them are stop and questions, are based on reasonable suspicion, not probable cause for arrest.
Right now, and I want you to think about you as your time as a prosecutor and as a former defense attorney, when you give too much discretion to anybody, regardless of what their job is, you're asking for trouble. And that includes politicians as well, if you don't have checks and balances. We have spoken to former police captains who say, please, if this is all about reasonable judgment here, that's one thing. But we have quotas that we have to hit. We have audio tapes in precinct houses where guys are told we got to make our numbers. I want a ghost town on the street. If people are being driven by numbers and not reasonable suspicions to meet their quota here, what do you think you're going to get?
I think that's whining, first of all. As I said, we have to look at how many stops are being made, and we may have hit a level of too many stops. But to expect police officers to do a certain amount of work during a month to make one arrest.
Wait, time out. Just so I'm clear, do you think it's okay? Wait, do you think it's okay for Ray Kelly or his subordinates to say, you're not going to stop people based on reasonable cause? We have quotas. If it comes out, wait, time out for a second. Time out for a second.
Don't even go there.
Are you kidding me? We have audio tape on it.
You're not going to stop people based on reasonable cause.
Councilman, are you aware of audio?
That's bull, and you know it.
No, there's audio tape of a captain telling his people.
Ray Kelly.
If it comes from Police Plaza,
33,000 cops that have said that.
Time out. If it comes from Police Plaza, that the guys are given directives to make their numbers, would you immediately say, get rid of Stop and Frisk?
That doesn't mean don't stop people based on reasonable cause. That means make a number, okay? Make a number means this is what we think you should be able to do as a good cop using your training. You should be able to stop this many people. That's what it means. It does not mean go out there and stop people based with no reasonable suspicion.
With all due respect, what do you think it's going to mean if you're a patrolman and you're told that you have to have a certain number? You don't think you're going to stop people to make your number, whether or not there's a reasonable suspicion? Give me a break.
Not if the number's a reasonable number. No. Not if the number's not a reasonable number, you do your job.
So who decides what's reasonable?
Yes.
Now you're saying it's a number, not what's going on the street.
Does. That's who.
Oh, come on.
Okay,
all right, let me ask you a question, Councilman. How many times have you been put up against a building?
Never.
Okay, me either. They're not coming to your neighborhood here. So the next logical question comes, if you're going to Bushwick and not to Astoria.
Mothers aren't being shot outside my schools picking up kids. That's why.
So if you live in the wrong neighborhood, you should expect different justice.
Where shootings are happening.
Time out. Then as long as we're being upfront.
If you live in a high-crime neighborhood, you're going to ask for more cops. And then when they show up, they do their job, which is based on reasonable suspicion, make stops.
As long as you're willing to say, as long as you're willing to say up front, hey, if you live in a rough neighborhood, you should expect to be stopped and frisked rather than if you're living on Park Avenue or Astoria. As long as we're saying that comes with the territory by living there.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. As long as you're willing to say, if you don't get stopped and frisked, you will lose more lives, that's completely consistent. I have complete respect for people who say, look, this is a policy that results in too many bad stops, and there are absolutely bad stops. We need to stop it. I'm willing to live with more minority deaths. That's completely legitimate. But what I can't understand is people will say we need to end this policy and we're going to continue to keep murder rates low. That's not going to happen.
But if I follow your logic, but here's the big problem I have. If I follow your logic, we might as well get rid of the Constitution and say, you know what, screw it.
Oh,
no more
please.
warrants.
You
can say, no, time out. You look at somebody's house and you say, you know what,
has been okayed by the courts,
looks rough.
right?
Let's just go in. No warrants. I bet you save more lives doing that, too.
I'm glad you're so objective about this, by the way. I'm glad you're so objective.
It doesn't matter what I think. My point is, if I had my kid, your kid, and then somebody living in an area, and you got 3 different sets of justice, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Well, you ask the law-abiding people and these citizens when their kids are being shot outside of school in these neighborhoods, whether or not they want more police. They cry to us for more police. We hear this. And when you send more police there, they do their job. Is it a policy that needs absolute oversight, constant oversight? Yes. Is it a policy that needs improvement? Yes. Is it a policy that may need to be stepped back? I think so. I agree with you on that.
All right. So you've heard from both sides here, those who support and those who oppose. But there's one group of people we haven't heard from that, those who have been stopped and frisked themselves. For them, it's not just a policy kind of idea, it's practical life. What is it like to be stopped and frisked, and what does it not only feel like, but what are some of the long-term consequences in the neighborhood? Let's bring back Kim right now. She went in search of those answers, and you put some faces to the numbers here. What'd you find?
Yeah, Rich, this was surprising even to me. When we went to the silent march, we asked people a very simple question. Have you ever been stopped and frisked? The question then turned into, well, how many times have you been stopped and frisked? Victims talked about the encounter almost like an assault, saying they felt violated and that it happened too quickly for them to even realize what was happening.
Felt violated. Felt like I was doing something wrong when I wasn't doing anything wrong.
16-year-old Keontae Williams and his father Leroy have both been stopped and frisked by police.
When I asked the cop, why did he stop me? He says, well, you look suspicious. And when I said to him, I can't believe this is happening to me, he says, well, I don't believe you. This has had to happen to you before. So he just presumed that I should be used to this. And it just got me upset. So I'm down here, and hopefully my son will not have to go through this.
Williams says he resents the fact that in this father-son moment, he's instructing his son about how to behave in front of the cops if he's ever stopped and frisked again.
My advice is that, you know, be careful with when you see the police. Don't answer any questions. Just say yes or no. And if you have anything in your pockets, don't reach in your pockets. Just, you know, tell them who it is. If they ask for your ID, show your ID. But don't get any smart answers or anything. If anything happens, you come back to me and we'll deal with it later on.
We heard countless stories of people, mainly young black men, being stopped multiple times in neighborhoods like the Bronx, Harlem, and Bed-Stuy.
My third time I was stopped and frisked, it was actually in Harlem in a park where I came to celebrate with my friends. We were dancing to Beyonce, and we were quickly harassed by cops who made implications about our sexuality, were suggesting that we were going to have unlawful sexual activity, and was just kind of harassing and targeting us just for going to the park and dancing to Beyonce.
I have to be over 10 times since I was about 15 years old. I'm 26 now.
John Hector from Canarsie, Brooklyn, said what many victims expressed about the first time they were stopped and frisked.
First of all, I didn't know maybe that it was happening in the first place. You don't know that, oh, you're oblivious to the stuff actually going on, but when it actually happens to you, like, you feel nervous, you don't know what to expect. You hear the stories about people getting killed by the police, and stop and frisk is also part of that in different cases. So, I mean, the first time it ever happened, like, it was kind of surreal to me. I didn't know how to react to it. You know, they come up and they curse at you and they treat you very disrespectfully and ask you where you're going, where you're coming from, pat you down and fill your privates up and everywhere else and search my pockets. They've handcuffed me sometimes. Even though I wasn't being arrested, they've handcuffed me. They've than plenty of things.
And in all cases, victims we spoke to said police handled them roughly and aggressively.
In the first instance, they were aggressive. They rifled through my pockets. Really had nothing to do with anything because I wasn't committing any crime. I was just coming from the train station and going to my house.
It's a scary environment to live in when the people who are supposed to be protecting you are your enemies, and they make it blunt every day that they are your enemies.
There is a bill before the City Council to create an Inspector General to oversee the NYPD. Governor Cuomo is also calling for changes to make it harder for police to arrest people with small amounts of pot found only as a result of that stop. Rich.
All right, Kim, thank you very much.